What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here for, of course, the UFC 257 recap. Of course, let me just lower my camera a bit. Conor McGregor returned after a year out of the cage, and of course, Dustin Poirier came in and stopped the show in very significant fashion. He looked phenomenal, didn't eat a diamond. He came out the underdog, of course, a rematch after 6 years in the making. Of course, he got knocked out in that first one, but he put on a phenomenal performance against Conor McGregor, who had been inactive, but we see the growth now of Dustin Poirier from that first fight to now. He is the second best lightweight in the world that isn't named Khabib Nurmagomedov, and if Khabib, is officially retired or stays retired, there's no doubt in my mind that Dustin Poirier, will be next in line for that title, will be the number one lightweight maybe for the next 2 or 3 years. It was a sublime performance. Obviously, you look at his resume coming into this, the Alvarez win, Gaethje, Anthony Pettis, he did go over to Abu Dhabi and lost to Khabib, but he gave us then Dan Hooker performance. So he is the best lightweight in the world at the moment. There isn't Khabib Nurmagomedov, but it's a shame that Saturday night wasn't for the title, of course, because he would have fulfilled his destiny for walking out, as an undisputed rather than just being known as that interim lightweight champion. But I think the next fight he has will be for the undisputed, and he probably will walk out undisputed unless maybe Khabib Nurmagomedov is the one who's returning. But I don't think that happens. I don't think Khabib wants to return. Dana White keeps putting the feelers out there, keeps trying to tease him back in or tempt him back to come back. But, especially now that Conor McGregor lost, we can't exactly build a Conor McGregor Khabib 2, which would have been the money fight. And, Khabib's already beat Dustin quite significantly. So I think it's time to forget about Khabib now and just focus on the array of talent we've got on show at the moment. We've got Charles Oliveira waiting. We've got Justin Gaethje, albeit coming off a loss. He's still there. Conor McGregor is still there, despite losing on Saturday night. Tony Ferguson is slipping away, but again, a win or two this year. As he comes back and wins in March, he's back in the title mix. And, Dan Hooker's still there. And obviously, Michael Chandler's put himself on the mix now with a phenomenal win on Saturday night too. But to look at the main event, of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. We're one away from 100 subscribers, and we're about 19 away from 2K followers on Facebook now. So make sure to hit that follow button, of course, as well. And yes, Dustin Poirier put in a sublime performance. He came out of the gates, really quick. He went straight at McGregor, who looked a bit, maybe, because with McGregor, into the build up to the fight, there's a lot of he's the best either, he's looking sharper than either, he's looking, more technical than other. Maybe that is true. Maybe McGregor coming into this was the best McGregor we've seen. But it's a McGregor that wasn't inactive, the McGregor that only had 40 seconds in the cage within, 2.5, 3 years since the Khabib fight, we went 4 rounds, of course. So the inactivity has caught up with him by the looks of it. But again, nothing to take from Dustin Poirier. He came out, he took McGregor down straight away. And, it looked like it was going to be a good scrap. It looked like it was going to be reminiscent maybe of the Nate Diaz rematch where McGregor's maybe going, let's try and have 5 rounds of this. These two are definitely, quite similarly matched in skill set. And we see, Dustin Poirier's got a hell of a chin on him. He looks a lot better at lightweight than he did at 145. There's a couple of points where Conor McGregor clipped Dustin Poirier quite heavy. And even Poirier said, if he poured the pressure on him, maybe I would have not been able to continue, but fortunately he did. He grew from that, and maybe if it was a 145 bout, he probably wouldn't have, just because of that extra bit of power that McGregor has and the replenishing of Poirier to get down to that weight class as well. But he looked phenomenal, and those calf kicks. I think we mentioned in the preview. Obviously, we did a preview with Jay. The calf kicks isn't something that Conor McGregor, has been predominantly exposed to, especially. They've become a lot more predominant during the time he's been away from the cage, from about mid-2018, 2019. Especially last year, you're seeing calf kicks pretty much every fight now. They've become a predominant force in this game. Now, maybe that's naivety on Conor. Maybe, if he's watching all these fights during 2020 and commented on that, maybe he should have been a bit aware that maybe the game has sped up, the game has changed a little bit more. And the fact that he's come out and said he's not really been exposed to those weapons, it does, propose questions as to why. If you're watching the sport, because he is a martial artist, and you could see as soon as he lost that fight, he was already analysing his performance and Dustin's performance in the cage before, the official announcement had even been made. And I think he comes back strong from this. I hope he comes back strong because, as John Hennick said, the sport is better with him. And I was thinking, is it, it threw me back to maybe Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes, where he'd come out, had a little while out of the cage, obviously suffered a loss to Nurmagomedov, which is his first biggest loss. Well, it was his biggest loss, you could say, and maybe that's the Holly Holm sort of loss if we're comparing it to Ronda Rousey. Took a year out, obviously came back against Cerrone, which Ronda Rousey never came back and got a win like that. And then obviously this was almost reminiscent of Nunes or Poirier being as Nunes in this scenario, stamping his authority down on the division, almost going right. McGregor, who's Ronda Rousey in the scenario, your time's done. It's time for us as a sport to move on. But again, I think it's harsh on everyone saying McGregor's finished, McGregor's done. I think, partially he's right. The inactivity has got to him. And I think he still wants that season. You could see he's still chomping at the bit to compete. And the fact that he wasn't really too down and too hard on himself, but at least on the post-fight press conference shows that he will learn from this. And if anything, we see how McGregor learns. We saw it against Nate Diaz. And, there's talk coming out tonight that he wants that rematch immediately for the trilogy with Dustin Poirier. And I think, knowing how he is, knowing how he trains, he will be predominantly focusing on Dustin Poirier. Now, whether we get that, we don't know. Obviously, Michael Chandler's in the mix now for the title. It's probably going to be a vacant title mix, whether it's Poirier who's booked his ticket into that vacant title bout. It's either Oliveira or Chandler for me. It depends on. And Dustin Poirier said Poirier said Oliveira deserves it a little bit more because he's put a lot more work in, whether it's Chandler's coming as the new boy, got his first win in the UFC, and it's almost like he doesn't want to get promoted up too fast. Whether you give him Justin Gaethje or Tony Ferguson, I don't know. But he put a phenomenal performance nonetheless. But let's have a look at the statistics. Of course, there was only one strike differential landed between Poirier and McGregor, and it shows the success that McGregor was having in that first round, clipping him a couple of times, using those shoulder strikes, a couple of elbows, and a clinch up against the fence. But, I think 16 of those 53 for Poirier were those kicks to the calves, and ultimately that's what caused the downfall of the fight. And you can see he had almost double the significant strikes as well. And obviously that 1-out-of-1 takedown. I don't know where the 0-out-of-1 takedown came from McGregor, whether he attempted a takedown in round 2 or catching some of those kicks later on in round 1 and round 2. But yes, you could see what the fight was won. It was the fact that Dustin Poirier did show an array of talent in that game plan. It wasn't just pure striking. It wasn't just pure wrestling. It was a good hybrid between the two. But, McGregor did put a good showing in that first round. He probably did win the first round 10-9, in my opinion. I think he just did a little bit more damage and he caught Poirier, as we mentioned before, a couple of times in that round. I do think he just edged that round. It was a very close round, but of course, he went back to the cage and stayed standing, which might have been a little suggestion to us that maybe his calf was done in that first round, because as soon as he came out the second, he got hit again, and I think that was the beginning of the end for McGregor. And it did almost look sad, didn't it? I know he's got a lot of haters out there and a lot of people that doubt him and a lot of people that dislike him. And maybe that's probably granted at periods of Conor McGregor's career. But the way he's carried himself this past year, being a very fatherly man, a huge family man. You've got Dee, his fiance there in the corner, crying her out while she's pregnant, of course, expecting a child in the summer. Seeing McGregor lay down the canvas there, I think I was saying this in our group chat. The fact that it was him getting knocked out and not submitted. We've seen him get submitted before, but we've never seen Conor McGregor laid out on the canvas like that in a point where he does look quite vulnerable. It's always been a test of skill in jiu-jitsu or grappling that he's lost, and that can happen. Everyone gets tapped out in jiu-jitsu, and or in a jiu-jitsu sort of interaction, I guess, for want of a better word. But seeing him knocked out and seeing the elation of Dustin Poirier was a mixed thing, because everyone knows how good Dustin Poirier is and how much respect he deserves. We didn't want him to be knocked out inside 60 seconds with the other side of the fan base coming out and going, oh, he's just a can, he's not that good, he's a bit overrated. Because Dustin Poirier is certainly not overrated. He was a very young fighter when he fought McGregor, and he's, aged phenomenally, and he's doing phenomenally well for himself. But yes, it was a fantastic fight. It was an upset, of course, in the bookies, but maybe we should have seen this coming. I was watching DC and Hawani, and the fact that Poirier has been so active in the cage. Maybe we should have expected this result maybe a little bit more, rather than expecting Conor to go in there and wipe the floor with him like he did the first time. Because let's not forget that Conor McGregor that fought him in 2014 was a Conor McGregor that was on the rise, very hungry, very brash, and one that was obviously very active. Maybe if they'd taken a year out, in 2013 before he fought Poirier, maybe he would have had a similar result because obviously Poirier is putting in the hours more. Now, it does open the fact to a trilogy, and as I mentioned, Conor McGregor seems to be trumping at a bit for the trilogy. We've got the Nate Diaz trilogy. I do like the idea of RDA, who obviously come back down to lightweight, got a win against Paul Felder. That fight was meant to happen in 2016, of course, and then ended up kicking off the whole Nate Diaz saga. When he pulled out with a foot injury, I'd like to see, McGregor RDA as well. I think that'd be a good fight. You got Dan Hooker in the mix now after that loss. Maybe you do, kind of Dan Hooker. It doesn't sell or promote itself as well. Even as a Conor McGregor fight, it doesn't sell as well as RDA because obviously there's previous there, and obviously Nate and Poirier both 1-1, of course. So I'd like to see the Poirier trilogy get completed. I think we wouldn't have said a year ago that the trilogy that we want to see is the Poirier trilogy because obviously the second chapter hadn't been written. Everyone wanted Nate Diaz, or maybe Khabib trilogy if you're just going to pick a trilogy for McGregor to go through. But I think the fact that Poirier has shown how close he is, I think we book it again for the vacant title maybe. But again, it feels harsh on Oliveira and Chandler, who are coming into a potential title match on the wins. Whether you give it to Conor McGregor, who's coming off the back of the loss, same with Gaethje. Maybe put those two in as the number one contender bout perhaps. But it's really opened up this division, hasn't it? And it's interesting. For me, Dustin Poirier, his next opponent, his next opponent should probably be Charles Oliveira on the sporting background. But I do think we see him face McGregor one more time. The fact that these two had a very nice sort of warm entrance into the fight week. There was none of the trash talk. Maybe there will be trash talk in the trilogy as well. They are both 1-1, both got finishes over each other too. It's not like one's had a dodgy decision and the other one's got a hard fought contest. It's both clean finishes, you could say. And you could probably even say Dustin Poirier's was cleaner than McGregor's in the first one, in fact, in terms of the way it's done. But again, that's probably a little harsh on McGregor, and there's a lot of recency bias in there. But just take a look at the rankings, of course, and to credit BT and obviously Nick Pete and the unofficial lightweight tournament, we do see McGregor and Dan Hooker get knocked out. Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler do progress into the semi-finals, and that leaves just Justin Gaethje and Oliveira maybe to scrap it out, and that's where we get our vacant title match with Gaethje versus Oliveira. The winner gets Dustin Poirier in September, maybe. But again, John Kavanagh has come out and said he wouldn't mind the trilogy between Conor and Dustin before the summer. So maybe do that, and then we get a vacant title bout between Poirier, McGregor, Gaethje, and Oliveira. Maybe maybe at MSG if that's a thing that's capable to be done this year, especially with COVID. But the fact we've got fans back in Abu Dhabi, you're probably going to be seeing more fighters over there. It's just whether the States, almost follow suit later on in the year. Now, we move on to Mr. Bellator, or former Mr. Bellator. He might as well just made himself Mr. UFC this week, and is Michael Chandler. He looked phenomenal against Dan Hooker. He looked a bit timid himself. Didn't look like the Dan Hooker we saw against Paul Felder or obviously Dustin Poirier, as we did last year. He gave us start of the year contenders. He went 10 rounds. Maybe that's caught up with him a little bit more because he did take a lot of damage despite not falling. And that maybe his chin, I don't want to question his chin, but we haven't seen him finish like that by Paul Felder or Dustin Poirier, and it shows just where Michael Chandler is. There's a lot of people going into this week, doubting Michael Chandler, saying Bellator, the elite of Bellator have no sort of place in the UFC's top 5. Obviously, we've seen Ben Askren didn't quite go to plan, but you see Eddie Alvarez, a former champ, Justin Gaethje from World Series of Fighting, or PFL as it's now known, is coming in and look phenomenal at the top of the division at the moment, albeit not with the gold wrapped around his waist. So, Michael Chandler came and he knocked out Dan Hooker. Again, we haven't seen Paul Felder, with all due respect, or Dustin Poirier do that to him. And the fact that, I'm just thinking about this now, the fact that, Dan Hooker did go 10 rounds last year in very competitive fights. Maybe, his body just wasn't ready for that. But again, Michael Chandler hits very hard, hit him with that left that I think Dan Hooker, he didn't quite see it because obviously there was a lot of the overhand rights. One thing I did notice is Michael Chandler, for someone who's 5'8", he makes that move from out of reach to just inside of Dan Hooker's reach and being able to connect. He did that phenomenally. He was moving around the cage all day long Well, I say all day long. It was only 2 minutes that he fought for. But again, got on a fantastic show, and Dan Hooker will come back because he is gritty. Although he did throw his gloves in the cage, I think that's more out of frustration rather than retirement. We probably would have heard something from him had he, had planned retirement on losing. Again, Dan Hooker, of course, is in a sticky situation because he's now got to be in Fight Island or at least Abu Dhabi till the end of February now. He's going to be stewing on that loss, which probably grows him a little bit more. Obviously, he's not got his coach there, Eugene Berman, so it's not like he can maybe instantly go to work and almost fine tune and get that loss fresh out of his head, put it down as a bad night and move on. He's gonna be thinking about this for the next month, 6 weeks when he gets back to New Zealand and then can get training again. And maybe you give him Tony Ferguson, because I think that would be a good scrap as well. Both of them coming off the losses now. Both of them, very game, very sellable assets, very fun fighters to watch, and whether that's competing or selling or promoting a fight. And on the mic, of course, both of them are very good. Talking about on the mic, Michael Chandler, phenomenal phenomenal post-fight interview, should I say. He sold that phenomenally well, calling out McGregor, Poirier, and obviously asking if if he returns to come and try and beat him if he could. That was one of the best press conferences, interviews that I've seen in a very long time. The way he did that, it was very impressive. We see a lot of them going, "Oh, thank you, I'm glad to be here." Whoever the UFC want to give me next, I'll be down for. And you them, one, she's fighting in a different weight class because he's a champ, and two, if you want to call anyone ducking, you can never call Amanda Nunes someone who ducks opponents. Her resume says that she's game as anyone, but the fact that she is gathering two weight classes, just shows how phenomenal she is. And Juliana Pena was a good call out. I think their paths will cross eventually, but she was only 6th or 7th in the rankings coming into this one, of course. So yes, maybe in a more contender bout against someone like Holly Holm. I haven't got the bantamweight rankings on graphic tonight, but looking at the rankings, you could book up against Raquel Pennington. See, she's 7th in the rankings. Obviously, she'll move up tomorrow morning when they get released. So you do an Aspen lad, maybe Holly Holm, Jermaine Durandamy, getting them one contender bout. If she wins that, then she gets Nunes maybe on later on in the year. Because you can imagine Nunes gets a featherweight defense, a successful featherweight defense. She'll probably be fighting again in July, August, maybe at bantamweight, perhaps, depending on what goes on with the division, of course. But again, Julia Pena showed herself very well, as did Michael Chandler. Kick back to Michael Chandler. Look at the statistics, of course. Only 8 strikes landed there from Dan Hooker, of course, who did look a little timid in there. Looked a little like he frozen on the night. And then 17 out of 24 strikes there for Chandler, of course. And he looked absolutely phenomenal doing it. And he got the win inside 2.5 minutes. But a fantastic scrap and a fantastic strength from him. Many people calling this the best debut since Anderson Silva, maybe tops Anderson Silva's debut. But, he's put himself right in the title mix now. And rightfully so, is the backup to Khabib and Gaethje for UFC 254. And maybe that, shows just where he is now. He's phenomenal. It'd be interesting to see the likes of maybe Pitbull coming over to the UFC very soon, because Pitbull does have a win over Michael Chandler, of course, and Pitbull is probably the next in line if you're looking at the Bellator superstars. As who would you like to see in the UFC? He's been so dominant on Bellator at the moment. It'd be nice to see him maybe once he finishes the Grand Prix. Well, actually, no, I think the Grand Prix finished, and of course, the featherweight Grand Prix has finished and concluded now. So yes, maybe seeing Pitbull over in the UFC maybe later this year would be very nice. Maybe see Pitbull versus Chandler. Maybe we get the All-Star Bellator bout in the UFC and the Premier Organization. But yes, Michael Chandler, phenomenal performance, phenomenal speech, and he's just shown that he's an amazing person this weekend, especially the way he's carried himself. Not many people would have probably seen Michael Chandler if they hadn't seen him in Bellator or don't watch Bellator. This would have been their first sort of exposure to Michael Chandler, albeit the UFC 254 sort of embedded series build up across that, and he's shown himself very well. And yes, I'd like to see him face Dustin Poirier. Then Dustin Poirier said he wouldn't be fighting Michael Chandler next. But again, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, book it against Michael Chandler. There's even a part of me that wants to see Khabib Chandler just to see how that goes down. But again, I don't want to force Khabib out of retirement just yet. It's got to be something that he wants to do, and I don't think he does. They move on, of course, to Joanne Calderwood versus Jessica Rai. Joanne Calderwood back in the win column, of course, with a decision over Jessica Rai, of course. I don't know, it was a close fight. It was a very scrappy fight. Both of these had gone back and forth on social media in the past with Jessica Rai making weight. And they came out and gave it. It was almost like a street brawl, really, in a sense. Joanne Calderwood very Muay Thai heavy in terms of clinching up, lots of elbows, lots of knees, lots of body work inside the clinch as well. And then it went to the ground. And Just Cry, was the second in the mix there on the ground as well. Jaron Calderwood did favour the grappling side of it as well. And, it's good to see her back in the win column. She had a tough 2020. Was expecting to go into a title challenge against Valentina Shevchenko. Obviously, Shevchenko got injured. And then she lost to Jennifer Maia, who then went on to take her spot and lose to the champion anyhow. But yes, the fact that she's back in the win column, beat a top competitor in Jessica Rai, of course, who these were both 6th and 7th in rankings, I believe, or 7th and 8th in the flyweight rankings. Yeah, 6th and 7th. So maybe give her a Cynthia Calvi or Lauren Murphy, Caitlin Chikagan, or that would boost her up. She's going to be top 6, top 5 coming Tuesday. But yes, Joanne Calderwood, Caitlin Chikagan would be a good scrap both. I was saying on the preview, it's interesting to see what the UFC plans with her. The fact that she still took a fight, albeit not against the champion, may favour her later on in the year. Say if there's an injury to Jessica Andrade or Caitlin Chikagan, touch wood, there won't be. Maybe Joanne Calderwood could be the backup for a challenger going into a title fight with Valentina this year. But yes, looking at the rankings, of course, 104 strikes against 218 now for Jessica Rai, of course. 77 of them significant 1 out of 4 takedowns, and very similar, a much higher output for Joanne Calderwood. 214 strikes, 319 of them landed, 148 out of 240 were significant, and 1 out of 3 takedowns. So yes, 2 very close competitors. It does show the closeness of that flyweight division once you take out the queen of the division in Valentina Shevchenko. Everyone down from Jessica Rai down to Joanne Calderwood are very close. You'd probably say Jessica Andrade's maybe, quite comfortably second in a league of their own due to the body of work she's done at strawweight, and how easy she made her last opponent look. But yes, I would say, phenomenal performance from Joanne Calderwood. And, as a Brit, as someone who likes to see UK fights thrive, it's nice to see her back in the win column. But that moves us on, of course, to Makhmud Muradov versus Andrew Sanchez. Of course, Muradov coming in, putting on a performance of the night, worthy performance against Andrew Sanchez. Got the win in the 3rd round finally with that TKO. And, of course, opening up the main card was a bit of a surprise in terms of Marina Rodriguez defeating Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas had come into this card very highly touted after a phenomenal year going 3-0 in 2020, 4-0 on a 4-fight win streak in her last 4 fights. Coming into this, obviously, most recently had beaten Paige VanZant. She's got a lot of the spotlight from that. Her followings, trebled, if not quadrupled, since that fight. And she's still very happy. I was seeing her social media post fight. Once she got back to the W Hotel, she's still buzzing around there, getting her breakfast, getting her juice, because obviously they'd fought early in the morning. But Marina Rodriguez did look very good. She looked a little bit too strong for Ribas, and of course there was that little hiccup from Herb Dean in the middle where we thought the fight had been stopped. Hadn't been stopped, it continued, and fortunate for Marina Rodriguez because she had deserved the win after that point. She did get the win, almost like the Daniel Rodriguez controversy where we thought the fight, or with the misplaced groin strike, that the fight then turned on its head. I can't remember his opponent off the top of my head. I do apologize. But again, we got the right victor, and just a couple minutes later, Marina Rodriguez had her arm raised by Herb Dean, and all was well. But Amanda Ribas will bounce back from this. We'll take a quick look at the statistics. Of course, 26 strikes out of 52 there for Rodriguez, 35 out of 57 for Ribas, 15 out of 36 significant, and only 7 significant strikes landed there for Ribas. So it's interesting what her game plan. She was taking a lot of the central of the octagon, but she was doing a lot of chasing of Rodriguez as well. So maybe just a bad night. It's interesting to see how these fighters do sort of come out having fought at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. local time. No, it isn't the same as fighting 9 p.m. In the UFC Apex on US soil. It's interesting how they And it's very interesting how Dustin Poirier has come out and said, Fight Island 1, he called it CTE Island after the knockout. And then he said it's almost like fighting your way off the island. You're sat in your hotel for 2 weeks, almost pondering about what's going to happen on fight night. You're not walking around as you would at Vegas on the strip. Maybe, you're not cutting weight in the traditional sense where you can just almost live life. You're stuck in your hotel for 2 weeks until you get your results back and whatnot, and then you're just going to the workout room or the pool. You're staying within that facility, so it must have a mental effect on the fight or on the fighter. And maybe, who knows, maybe Amanda Ribas will come back from this, of course, and look at the strawweight rankings. She was 10th, of course. I don't see her moving down too much. There wasn't, anyone fighting beneath her on the same card. But, you got your Mackenzie Dunn, Dido Ribas Torres, Mackenzie Dunn, I believe, got a fight coming up soon. I don't know against who, though. I think it may be Carla Esparza. I think Carla Esparza's got a fight coming up soon, but I might be talking absolute nonsense there. But yes, it is a little step back for Ribas, but I imagine she will be back. For Marina Rodriguez, this win's going to do the world of good, getting the bounce back off the spotlight of Ribas. A lot of eyes would have been on this fight coming into this main card open as well on the pay-per-view, McGregor pay-per-view too. So it leaves her all in good stead, and it's just she's going to be number 7, probably number 6 going into the weekend, where we know we have got a break now. We've got a break for 2 weeks, unfortunately. But yes, the strawweight division it is looking very good, and it'd be nice to see Ribas get back into the win column very soon. She's always very happy, very enjoyable, and very likable. Whenever you see her, whether it's on an embedded or an interview, she always comes across very well. And before we do let's have a look at the full results. Of course, it was quite decision heavy. Amir Belzi beat Zalgas Zumagulov, of course, by decision. Movsar Loev, sorry, hard on the pronunciation, beat Nick Lentz, and then Nick Lentz did come out and say he's retiring after that fight. He's lost, I think he's lost 40% of his eyesight over the years due to injuries, of course, and he wanted to see if he could go one more. And he did have a hard fight. You saw the fight, or the picture he took post-fight once he was back in his hotel, announcing his retirement. So he did lose by decision. Marcin Prachnio did lose to did beat Khalil Roundtree by decision. I do think Khalil Roundtree beat him. I thought he looked very good. He looked absolutely huge. Whether they're feeding him over Tiger Muay Thai, I wouldn't mind some of that, because the protein source that he's on made him look absolutely huge. And I think he did get hard done by, as mentioned earlier, Juliana Pena beat Sarah McMahon by decision. Brad Tavares also beat Antonio Carlos Jr. Sorry, my readings went off tonight, isn't it? By decision. And then Arman Sarukian beat Matt Frathola. Of course, this fight was made on Friday after Ultimate decided to get cut from the UFC. And Hazrat also didn't make weight on Friday. So again, you have to feel a bit sorry for Frathola. He wasn't having the fight he was expecting, and maybe he would have got a win against Zaita. But again, Arman got the win by decision, and obviously 4 finishes and 1 decision on that incredible main card, which brings us to the end of the UFC Fight Island for now. I think we'll be back in March. I think that that triple header, and you got Adesanya and Blachowicz, that deserves to be on Fight Island in that big cage. As does Volkanovski Ortega, although you could probably see that being more in the UFC Apex. I know Dana White was saying that we'll probably be back in June, July, but I think we will be back sooner on the UFC Fight Island at least. And it's been a phenomenal week, hasn't it? Obviously, Max Holloway kicked it off against Calvin Kattar. Chiesa then put a grueling beatdown on Neil Magny over 5 rounds. And then last night we saw, or Saturday night, Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler with phenomenal finishes against, Dan Hooker and Conor McGregor. But yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure to hit follow buttons if you're on Facebook or Twitch. We'll be doing a lot more Twitch stuff very soon. Probably on a Sunday after the fight, a bit more chilled out vibe. A bit of Among Us, a bit of Fall Guys, perhaps a bit of FIFA maybe. But yes, I'm going to leave that one there, guys. And I'll see you guys on the next video.